And we're live. A couple retweets here. Get everyone on the feed. So hello, everyone out there on the internet. My name is Kevin Griffin. I am one of the co-organizers of RevolutionConf, coming back to Virginia Beach June 1st and 2nd, 2017. And as part of our initiative to get to know our speakers and get to know about their talks before the conference, I am joined today by Mr. John Loy. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well.
We are glad to have you, and I'm really looking forward to chatting about you, your life, your career, and your talk at RevolutionConf.
I look forward to.
So your talk, I love the talk the title of your talk, and we were going through submissions. This one kind of stood out, and it's always good when a talk title stands out because all the organizers went, "Yep, let's put this on the consideration list," and we really were happy that it made the cut. But your talk is titled "Hulk Bash: From Green Shell Scripter to Superhero," and we will talk more about your abstract and what's involved in the talk here in a moment. But I want to know more about you, sir. Where are you from? Where do you work? And what do you do?
I'm from Charlottesville, Virginia, so not too far away from Virginia Beach and Norfolk region. At WillowTree Apps, we're a company that specializes in apps of all kinds. We primarily have done smartphone apps and web apps in the past, but we're also open to bots, AI, IoT, almost any kind of development you can imagine. If we get asked to do it, we're probably going to say yes and figure out how to do it. But I'm primarily on the web app side. I have a history in web apps from lots of different angles. I've been on the back end. I've been a user experience specialist. I've been a designer. And now I'm a front-end developer, so I'm kind of very solidly lodged in that realm right now.
Awesome.
I'd love to be able to do some other sorts of development, though, so which is why I come to the conference.
Yeah, it's fun meeting people who do a variety of different things and you learn so much. I know I like to say I'm a jack of all trades, but master of none. I'm just know a little bit about everything and try to. So that's where you are now. I like to ask all of our speakers, what's your origin story? When did you get the bug for software development? And how'd you progress to where you are today?
Funny, I actually see your T-shirt. I have a fake internet job. That's kind of how I felt for most of my career, just because. Well, actually, I should say that I sort of feel like a poser when it comes to being a software developer, because I originally studied design, and at the time that I studied design, believe it or not, they actually prohibited us from using computers for design. Predated, Photoshop 1. If I think Photoshop 1 came out when I was a senior, and then finally in the summer after my senior year, I took a course in HTML. Just because it was sort of the hot thing at that point. You could use Adobe PageMail or whatever the hell it was, but but I learned some HTML. At that point, I think we were still using GopherNet to do a lot of things online, and I had an email address but didn't quite know what to do with it. So I went on from school there to work for a design firm that just happened to be dabbling in some web design, but at the time they treated it like print design. So I kind of evolved over the years from being the worker bee in the design firm, slinging some HTML here and there, to eventually being a webmaster at the University of Virginia. Once I was there, I kind of caught the bug. My first language was Perl, which is, if you're familiar with Perl, it's significant in terms of what you have to be initiated into to use it well. And to this day, I still feel like I have a really strong grasp of regular expressions as a result. But wrote some CGI scripts, went on to PHP, and then eventually, when I left the university, I was hired as a Rails developer. But kind of always tried to push the company I was working for to do more front-end interactivity versus sort of the back-end driven app style that Rails tends to promote. And from there, I moved on to working primarily front-end jobs. So I've kind of picked up JavaScript along the way as it's evolved. And I think most people who are using JavaScript for heavy software development these days probably went through the same evolution.
Well, you're the third speaker in the past 2 days to mention Perl as part of their progression. So I came in way too late after the Perl craze, so I didn't have the I don't have the context to appreciate it. But it's like I also don't have the context to appreciate punch cards to the same extent.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, what's interesting is part of preparing for my talk, I've been reading a lot of articles about Unix history, and yeah, I mean, there's punch cards are definitely a part of that. But I don't have an appreciation for it.
Let's get into your talk. Again, I said it's called Hulk Bash, from green shell scripter to superhero. I'll let you say in your own words. If I'm an attendee and I'm coming into your talk, what level should I be coming in, and what should I expect to get out of it if I sit there for the half an hour?
So I think I'm assuming that if you're coming to my talk, you're familiar with typical flow structures in most programming languages, and you understand that shell scripting has some of those same sorts of things, like conditional if blocks and while loop, for loop, that kind of thing. I'm not going to be talking about shell scripting from the language perspective so much. In other words, like how to write software with it, because that's not usually what people do on the command line or with Bash. I mean, it is done, but most of us want to write in languages that we're comfortable with. But what I found the title of the talk is almost sort of like I would describe my journey, because I fight for years when it comes to Unix, Linux, command line stuff, and then eventually I just got tired of it, and I was like, I need to really learn this top to bottom. But there are a lot of concepts that you can glean from knowing Bash or Z shell or any of the other scripting shells that really help create command line tools for written in any language. So there are parallels, for instance, strong parallels in things like Node and Ruby, and a pretty popular language these days for command line scripts too.
And it seems a good chunk of my career I've spent in the Windows world, where everything back then was GUI based. It's like if you didn't have a GUI for it, you weren't really getting anything done. And it's just been over the past, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, I'm seeing such a transition back to command line from that ecosystem. The guys who are on Mac or Linux or Unix based systems all the time, they're like, we're always been command line. But so many of the tools I see, they're all command line, and to the point where there's no GUI, and there will never be a GUI. And I have a good friend up in Baltimore. He says, I'm never going to do command line. And yeah, I always have to say to him, well, you're probably not going to get much done then, because all the tools he's going to want to use over the next couple of years, they're all command line. It seems that's where the power and the flexibility and the scripting opportunity is.
Yeah, and I think that's why this kind of talk is necessary for a lot of people, because they don't really want to spend too much of their time getting familiar with the command line, but they realize that it's necessary to use the tools that that they have to use for whatever kind of development they're using, because almost every platform that I've ever worked with begins with some sort of command line scaffolding tool or a package manager, and then you're using Git along the way. Sometimes creating short scripts to automate just some of the steps in your build process, for instance. Those are all kind of part of the experience. And whether or not you want to use the command line, it's still very useful to kind of understand what's going on. But once you do understand it, there's some pretty amazing stuff that's being done with it right now. There's one in particular that I'm going to have a little segment in the talk about some of the WoW stuff that I've seen. But I mean, like there's a project in the Node ecosystem that can produce these really rich dashboards for you on the command line. I've never seen ASCII taken to such heights. It's pretty amazing. But But there's that, and I don't know if you're familiar with a tool called Ramda. It's a JavaScript library. Someone's actually ported it over to the command line. You need Node behind the scenes to use it, but you can use it for some really amazing functional purposes, like if you have a log that you want to stream and transform, it's just like a one-liner to do this amazing transformation of your data. So there's some pretty cool stuff that's going on. But it all requires understanding Bash and the shell and the terminal in order to kind of put it all together.
I remember in my earlier startup days, when we were just rapidly trying to get stuff out, we didn't spend much time on logging. We were logging everything out to text files, and the problem with logging everything to a text file is that text files can get really large, and we were running into some production issues, and I ended up pulling down like several hundred meg text files, and I had to search for a particular line inside of it, and that from the command, and we were it was all through SSH, so I didn't have a GUI or anything. I had to learn enough command line to be able to search a log file on a remote system through a terminal. And it really, once you learn a couple of the tricks, it's like, oh, let's grep that, and oh, okay, that's exactly what I need right here.
And it feels like a superpower once you can do that, which is part of the I guess the origins of the name of the talk. But you know, it's I think that like a lot of the resources that I found online about shell scripting, they kind of have this magicians or you know, guru sort of theme running throughout, as though, you know, you somehow need to be, you know, familiar with dark arts and incantations to do it well. So
yeah, and there's so many use cases where just a simple command line, knowing a simple command line, can save you a ton of repetition. The best in my scenario this week, where command line came to save me, where Bash came and saved me, was I had a local Git repo that I had not been diligent about cleaning up my local branches, and I think I had a couple hundred branches just sitting on this machine. None of them, they were all stale except master. And I'm like, all right, well, I know how to use Git command line to delete a branch, but my command line foo was not good enough to delete all the stale branches. And turns out, really just piping two commands together fixed my entire issue. I got rid of all my branches, no problem. It was like grep through the results of the branch list for every result that's not called master. Let's pipe that into the delete branch command, and boom, done. And if I did all that by hand, it probably would take me about 25 minutes. Just write the command. All right, this branch. Look up the next branch. Go. So it saves so much time. So I love that you're calling it a superpower, because it really does feel like that.
Yeah, there's also a really interesting fact, which I have to admit that I discovered only after I submitted the talk. But if you're familiar with the old Hulk TV show, like with Bill Bixby and Lou Ferrigno, so apparently that went on the air the same year that the Bourne Shell was released. So there's kind of like this tie in there historically. But what's interesting also is that in 1977, when that happened, the VT100, which is like the most common terminal emulator that most terminals now use, that was developed in 1978, or released in 1978, but developed in 1977. And then the ANSI escape codes that our terminals all use right now, that standard was actually developed in 1979. So like the era that Hulk was on the air was pretty much like the golden age of everything that we're using now in our terminals.
Oh wow, that's interesting. All right, so your abstract, you say you're going to have examples in Ruby, Python, Node, and possibly even Golang and Clojure.
Yeah, possibly.
That's awesome. That's ambitious.
I'll be getting some snippets from elsewhere, but yeah, I mean, I've got a bunch of tools that that I like to use that I know are written in some of those languages. So I'll probably just highlight those tools. I'm not actually very familiar with Golang myself. I've done a little bit of Clojure in the past, but yeah. So I kind of use shell scripting or command line scripting as a platform to learn other languages.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to be promoting that aspect of it, whether or not other people find that to be true. I do, just because you can see the parallels. But yeah, so there'll be a few snippets. In 30 minutes, it's kind of hard to go into too much detail about those. But
yeah, but there's plenty of time afterwards for people to sit around and talk. I know. I remember last year. There's a famous picture that we put out in our promotions of you sitting down with a couple other developers and just you were hacking something on a laptop. And so I expect that after your talk, people will come up to you and say, show me more, or what about this, or what about that? Should be plenty of time for that.
Well, yeah, I'm sure a lot of people have stuff to share too. So I'd love to do that kind of thing.
Yeah, we're all learning from each other. So that's the best part about being a speaker is when someone comes up and schools you on something you didn't know. It's like, awesome. Well, this wouldn't have happened unless I got up and talked about it. So this is not your.
I know there's going to be like.
But so no, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. Go ahead.
I was going to say you're a RevolutionConf veteran. You were here last year. So normally I ask people if they've been to Virginia Beach before, what are they looking forward to, but you've experienced RevolutionConf. So kind of in your own words, describe the feel of RevolutionConf.
Well, I feel like it's definitely for curious-minded developer, someone who kind of wants to dip their toes into a lot of things to see where it leads them. And I mean, just in the morning before any of the talk started, all the folks that I was talking with at the breakfast table there, that kind of really surprised me at the breadth of experience of the attendees. But then the talks that I went to also, I mean, they were all things that I wanted to learn, but all things that aren't necessarily things I'm going to learn my day to day. And so. The conference is unique in that way because typically you go to a conference that's very focused on either a platform or a community or a language, and I really like the polyglot nature of this.
Yeah, and this year it's double everything. 2 days, double the speakers. We're taking over our beach this year. We're doing a luau the first night of the conference.
Nice.
Then we have a
I can
happy
bring my
hour.
ukulele.
You'll bring how I have a ukulele that I was joking with my wife. So I play guitar, and I've always wanted to learn how to play ukulele because like you just watch anyone, they bust out ukulele and it's just magical. So she bought me a ukulele for Christmas last year, and I think I've learned like
I have no idea how to play it. It's just hanging on my walls.
So I'll bring mine, you bring yours, and we'll just pretend like we know what we're doing.
Cool. Yeah, I play guitar, so I can hold the frets down. I just don't know what will happen after that.
Awesome. So you've been to a RevolutionConf, and I know you've attended other conferences in the past. What recommendations or advice would you give to someone who is coming to RevolutionConf for the first time, or this might be their first conference experience?
Definitely come to all the social events because I think you learn a lot just chatting with people at the social events. But also don't necessarily attend the talks that you already know something about, because I feel personally like I love coming away having learned something totally new that blows my mind. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for that at a polyglot conference. Because I feel like the real value in going to a conference is learning something quickly in a really condensed schedule. So if you're just going to the talks, that reaffirm things that you already know, it's kind of a wasted resource.
I do the same thing. I have a couple other conferences I go to that they're agnostic in this kind of the same way that RevolutionConf is, and I always try and make it a point of go to something I don't know anything about, And the one thing we tried very hard to do with RevolutionConf is not just have the breadth of knowledge, but have the breadth of knowledge that is accessible for people who are not 200, 300, 400 level in those areas. So you're not going to find any 400 level Node.js talks here. You're not going to find any 200 level .NET talks. Things are, I mean, actually, we have a couple 200 level talks, but anyone could come into any talk and not know anything about the subject matter, and hopefully get something out of it, or at least gets 10% more knowledge than they had coming in. Well, actually, that assumes you have zero knowledge. So 10% of zero is nothing. So assuming you gain a little bit of knowledge coming into the conference.
Yeah, so, and I think it's great because some of the conferences that I've been to that have like the 400 level talks, it ends up going over your head because these people work for Twitter or a company that you're probably never going to work for, and they have concerns that are kind of in a league of their own.
Yeah, I've watched several videos on YouTube where it's a Netflix folks or Groupon or PayPal, and they're talking about these 600 level problems that they have, and they explain it. So it's like, oh, we solved this by doing this, and then they don't tell you this is like 9 months worth of effort, and 6 months of that is thought, just goofing around with stuff to see what makes sense, and
probably making mistakes.
Yeah, making tons of mistakes. All right, self-promotion time. John, is there anything you're working on publicly that you would like people to know about?
Not in particular. I've kind of struggled to find time for side projects in the past. I mean, to be honest, this talk is kind of the main side project that will have any publicity associated with it. But there's actually a tool that kind of was I guess the impetus for this talk that I developed for myself that I've been hoping to make open source at some point. I've even gone so far as to buy a domain name for it. But if you're familiar with Boxin and I forgot the other one, but there are a couple of environment workstation setup tools that have been developed that work sort of along the lines of package managers, where it's sort of like Docker. We virtualize a certain piece of your environment and then you can compose them. So what I've done is I've actually set up a really kind of simple GitHub or any kind of Git repository-based tool where every slice of your environment you can set up as a separate repo, and this tool actually composes them all into a final environment on your machine, so that you can share just, for instance, your Node environment with the world and say, this is how I do things. This is how my dot files look for Node. These are all the all the steps I go through to set up my Node. And then somebody can just choose to use that piece of it if they happen to want to. So it's tailored towards sharing just slices of an environment. But I actually set it up so that I could, whenever I get a new workstation, could just run a single command and the entire thing would just get set up immediately. And it uses Ansible under the hood for a lot of the installation work. So there's some legit config management stuff going on.
Awesome. So it's not public yet, but you would like to make it public?
Well, it's public in the sense that it's on GitHub, but there's zero documentation. So you can try it out and then be really confused. But I think I'd rather probably try to work on it before I get to the conference, and maybe if it's ready for prime time, promote it there.
Well, yeah, do a product launch or do a tool launch at the conference. That would be great. So. All right, and last but not least, where can people find John Loy on the internet if they would like to talk to you before the conference?
Provided that I start checking Twitter more often, you can certainly DM me on Twitter. I've kind of been very silent on social media as life kind of got busy for a while, but definitely on the run up to the conference, I'll be checking it a lot more. That's probably the best way. I'm also on Facebook, but Facebook is kind of like a wasteland at this point in terms of the number of people that are following and whatnot. So but Twitter's definitely the best way. And I will update my LinkedIn profile too if you happen to want to find me there. But
okay. Well, we'll drop links for all those things. Oh, I'm sorry. Something else?
I was also going to say that I occasionally post blog posts on our company website. And I actually intend to do one, maybe a couple of posts specifically about this topic of command line scripting before the conference. So if people want to head to WillowTreeApps.com, there might be some blog posts going on there. It's also just a great feed of stories overall for app development, mobile, web, and otherwise.
Awesome. Well, John, thank you so much. And if anyone out there on the internet want to come see John or any of our other amazing speakers, head over to RevolutionConf.com, and tickets are still on sale. We'd love to see you June 1st and 2nd, 2017 in beautiful Virginia Beach, Virginia. John, thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, and thank you, Kevin.